James
Corden.
Corden, right. When do you take over this show, James?
We will start on March 23rd. Yes.
Oh, unlucky 23rd of March.
Mr. James Corden!
We are very excited this morning for the next step in the evolution of late-night comedy. James Corden takes the stage on Monday. He's the new host of The Late Late Show right here on CBS.
I saw some announcement that a guy named James Corden was going to be taking over The Late Late Show, and so I Googled James Corden.
The news had gotten out that like they had picked a new host, and it was James Corden, and I was like, I don't know, it's like literally my job to know who everyone is, and I had never heard of James Corden.
I was puzzled, like everyone else, because he had no talk show background.
And then I saw that he was like an accomplished guy who had done a lot of stuff in the UK and had won a Tony on Broadway.
And it's kind of subversive because we all get to learn about him here in the States on the stage.
Believe me, however shocked you are that I am doing this job, you will never be as shocked as I am.
It was puzzling, but it was also kind of exciting because he was somebody who didn't come with any baggage or background or a team. Nobody knew what to expect.
I think that James being unknown helped us because I think that for Americans, he was a new discovery. And when it gets to be your new discovery, you sort of root for him. And so I think that he became a lot of people's new discovery.
James Corden went into CBS to pitch an idea for a sitcom. Well, instead, he walked out with a late-night talk show.
James calls me. I was like, how did the meeting go with CBS? He said, well, I don't think we're going to do the sitcom there, but they did offer me the late night show. And I was like, what are you talking about? He said, well, Letterman's retired and, you know, the bosses there really liked One Man, Two Governors, the show I was in. So he sort of kind of offered me the Late Late Show. And I said, I think it would be the worst thing you could ever do for your career.
And Ben said, stick to your guns, don't do it. Doesn't matter what they offer.
I was like, you want to be a guest on a late night show. Why would you go as essentially an unknown to America and host your own late night show? You're not Graham Norton. Like, what are you doing?
And I said to him, what if we just see it as an opportunity to be creative every day?
And he said, but imagine if every day we had a blank piece of paper to create an hour of entertainment for whatever we wanted to do. Blank piece of paper on the #1 network in America every single night.
And as we talked more, he started to come around to the idea of it, and I could see the wheels just starting to turn in his head.
Because I suddenly realised, well, if you didn't look at it as a late night show, if you didn't look at it as an interview programme, if you didn't look at it as talk, and you looked at it as a variety entertainment show, suddenly James Corden made more sense.
Then we were doing it. I think like 2 weeks after that it leaked, and a trending topic on Twitter was, who the f*** is James Corden?
The first thing you'll have to learn to do is throw to a commercial break.
Okay.
All right, you ready? It'll be all right. It'll be all right. It's fine.
I can't wait. Even this is making my chest very tight. I didn't know anything about what this show was going to be. I didn't know how it was going to feel. I didn't even know if it was a good idea.
I didn't know very much about American television. So we were very aware, James and I, that we needed to find an executive producer to join us on this sort of journey because so much we didn't know.
Leaving The Tonight Show to come start a brand new show on CBS at 12:30 with a host no one in America for the most part had heard of was an enormous leap of faith. I think that we all came out here and rented cars and rented houses and rented furniture because we thought they'd be back in London, I'd be back in New York in about 6 months or so.
I fully understand that this show probably won't go on for more than a year. I could see no path to success. There is a litany of people who've come from Britain to do a show in America. It hasn't worked, there's no shame in it, and you go back home and that's just what happens.
We had nothing to lose. We were like, well, if we fail, then we go back home, and at least we've had an amazing experience in Los Angeles and we've met a few famous people. But if we succeed, then the world's our oyster. And with that mentality, there was nothing conservative about our approach.
Hello, I'm James Corden. I'm the new host of The Late Late Show on CBS.
Our first days, we sort of got blasted out of a cannon in the sense that we got here in January and the show was going on television in March. And we were starting with an empty studio and no staff.
And we had a lot of work to do. And it was very stressful. It was literally like 5 of us. We needed to employ 70, 80 people. We needed to work out what the bits were. We needed to build a set. We needed to get a band together. We needed to decide the logo. We needed to decide our theme music. We needed to decide how we got an audience every night. we were under it.
All we really had was a shared emotional language about the show. We knew what we wanted it to feel like. We wanted it to be joyful. We wanted it to be sort of a bright end of the day.
We had to come at it roaring. We had to come at it fighting. We had to come at it guns blazing. This wasn't a quiet show that was just going to creep onto your television once you were falling asleep. This had to be a party every night. And following a talk show, we couldn't just be a talk show. We had to be a variety entertainment show that was loud and brash and exciting and gripped people.
Scene stealers, take one.
Mr. Reggie Watts.
Reggie has become an absolute essential element of the quirkiness and fun and joy and entertainment value of this show. He is both musically brilliant and incredibly funny.
Honestly, one of the greatest things that could have ever happened to the show.
Reggie, give me a solo. Oh, I like it, Reggie.
He's such a charismatic, unifying source of joy and energy.
The type of danger factor that he brings to a show when you ask a question and you really don't know what he's going to say.
All the way from where you're standing right now.
Or how much attention he's paying.
Yeah, that's you, Reggie. Yeah, that's, yeah, you're Reggie.
Or what song he's going to do, or what he's going to sing about. And especially as kind as he is and as much comedy cred as he brought to a show like this.
You were given a choice to remove your pancreas permanently or to develop a new line of railroad products. Which would you choose?
It just seemed like a really exciting, different flavor that you bring to that aspect of the show.
Can you tell us what's coming up in the next 2 weeks?
Yes.
Our band is so special. I mean, they came together in a way as if they had been playing together for 30 years.
I wanted to put together a band that was diverse and very different than any of the other bands that were on late night. I wanted it to be a Muppet band.
We replaced ourselves with oscillating inflatable tube people.
We definitely, of all of the late show bands, I think achieved the highest percentage of Muppet energy possible. I didn't want the band to rehearse, I wanted it to mainly improvise.
A lot of the songs that happened, you may never hear them again because that was just that night's music.
I think it's one of the greatest bands in television history.
I can't say enough great things about the band.
I remember just saying to Ben, like, just build me a playground. Just build me somewhere where I can play every day. What does everybody think of the set? You like the set? You like what we've done with the place?
Sets often reflect the personality of the host. And James and I at the time had talked about it being a show that was much more welcoming than other shows.
Normally when you do talk shows, it's sort of you, camera, audience. And we were like, I wonder if we could put audience between the camera and us.
Our set is like no other set. Our set was always designed to be shot 360. So everywhere you look, you can shoot. And we have shot every corner and every nook and cranny of this set.
The idea that you could be anywhere in this studio and you could shoot anywhere and it's gonna look good is not anything that I had experienced before.
The only late night talk show with a bar in our sets, what could possibly go wrong?
When we designed the set, the desk and couch had to be decided. Those are some of the biggest late night staples is what does your couch and what does your desk look like?
There's sort of like a time-honored tradition of the desk being on the far right.
The desk was originally set up like a traditional talk show, but the move to change it and flop it was made from necessity.
We didn't want to break any rules. I didn't even know we were breaking rules. We got there and we walked the chairman of entertainment through the show. And he was like, wow, that's very different. You're going to have the host on facing this side rather than that side. And I was like, different to what? And they were like, well, all late night shows, it's always been that direction. I was like, what does that matter? It's better this way. Like, I didn't understand any of it.
I must say I'm a bit thrown by it. I'm thrown.
You're thrown by this?
I'm thrown by it. It's on the other side where, you know, where we're used to having them in America.
One of the things that we thought about was, well, maybe we'd bring the guests out at the same time, which was something obviously we were aware of because it happens on a lot of English talk shows.
And so that created the need for a couch that could accommodate 3 people. So I have like really vivid memories of sitting outside on the loading dock with like a couch designer. We sort of figured out the exact curve and then built the couch that's been there for 8 years.
Should we meet our first ever guests on the new Late Late Show?
Not only did I not know who James Corden is, but literally nobody else did either. So challenge number 1 was like telling people and like showing people who he was.
So we would call and we would try and beg people to come on the show, but they'd always say the same thing. They'd say, let's see how the show goes. Call us back 3 weeks into the show and we'll let you know. But what I also realized was we didn't have time to wait and see if we would be a hit, because if we didn't get big stars on the show, then we weren't going to be a hit, and we would be off air by the 3rd week that they were offering their guests to come on.
It was a challenge. It was a challenge. You'd call people and say, you know, James Corden, Tony Award-winning actor from England, you know, and try to put him in context.
I think it was far tougher than I even know. I think a lot of stuff was hidden from me, because I think if I'd have known how few guests were committing to the show, I'd have probably had some kind of breakdown.
It was a really stressful time, yeah.
Once we did a few shows and publicists were here and word got out that it was a great place to come, it made our jobs easier.
There was like an element of like late night talk show that was always like a little off-putting, a little deprecating, and James was so the opposite of that. Like, he was so warm and he wanted you to feel so good about yourself.
Thank you for being my first guest.
You don't want to stay in the safety of the desk? You want to come out there and...
No, I want to be here with you. When you ever have a chat with people when you'd be stuck behind there, it's not my vibe.
We are indebted to Tom Hanks and Mila Kunis to be on, having been on that first show.
Mr. Tom Hanks!
It was James's idea. Once we knew we had Tom Hanks, we were like, what can we do? And he's like, well, let's recreate his entire film career. Basically, I was like, yeah, I can do that.
Shimmy, shimmy, cocoa pop, shimmy, shimmy, rock.
He came in a day early and rehearsed it.
And it just clicked. Like, it was just amazing to see them together.
You got a friend in me. Ladies and gentlemen, the amazing Tom Hanks!
To see that whole sketch performed live in front of an audience, it was unreal.
Tom Hanks's roll call was like the biggest thing on the internet the following day.
It basically laid out the groundwork for like every roll call we've done since then.
So I wake up this morning, I'm very nervous, you know, it's a big day for me.
We realized very early that if we didn't have an impactful first week, we weren't going to have a first month.
The first night, I mean, I think we all had a lot of nerves. We had a really ambitious day of what we wanted to put in that show.
We had one night to get it right, and that first episode was everything. And everything about that first episode was crafted and curated within a T of itself.
So they spent every single second that they possibly could and delivered as late as they possibly could to make it look right. To their credit, that first show looked really good.
If that 42 minutes hadn't been as crafted as it was, none of this exists today.
Well, I guess we can't put it off any longer. Let's do this. I'm James Corden, and this is The Late Late Show. Roll the title! I had the weirdest premiere night ever. I got an email from Bono, and he said, hey man, it's my wife's birthday on Monday night. We're having just a small dinner up in Malibu. Would love you to come. I was like, okay. So the show was going out LA time at like 9:30, and I just made a decision not to look at anything, not to read anything, not to engage with anything at all. So we finish the show and pick up Jules, and we drive up to Malibu and go into this like private dining room, this sushi restaurant, and Bono's there, and Charlize Theron's there, and Sean Penn, I think, was there, and Colin Farrell was definitely there. At about 10:10, I needed the bathroom. I just remember taking out my phone, and there was just a message from Ben that said, I know you're not going to go and look at Twitter or anything, but if you wanted to, you could. People are absolutely loving this show. And I just put my phone back in my pocket, walked back to the restaurant, and I was like, oh, life is really changing at a rate that's just making me uncomfortable. And I remember Bono said, he was like, how's the show? Has the show gone out? I was like, yeah, I think it just finished. And he was like, well? And I was like, I don't know, but I think it's gone okay. We've sat outside, like saw the stars and the oceans there. And he put his arm around me and he said, you know, it gets a bad rap, this place. There are more creative people per square foot in this city than anywhere on earth. And he said, in this moment in your life, it is absolutely where you should be. And he said, you've got to soak it all up. You've got to grab every single bit of it. He said, you're in for a wild ride. And I was like, thanks, Bono.
I always look back at that night as like a real defining moment in all of our lives, really, because that night I knew we were going to be okay. I knew that people had appreciated James for the talent he was. I knew that people were responding well to the new style of stuff that we were trying to make with this modern late night show. And I also knew that now the first episode had gone well, that set us up to do well for the rest of the series.
Reggie, take it home!
I think right from the beginning of the show, Everybody was excited about how it felt, how it looked. James as a performer, Ben and Rob as producers, the type of comedy that we were doing. Everything felt exciting.
So what do you think? Am I ready?
You're more than ready.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you so much, truly.
Knock 'em out.
The second day of work, episode 1 had gone out the night before, and I come into the office and I park my car, and there is this unbelievably gorgeous sports car parked right next to me, and I'm thinking, oh, I know whose car that is. I get to my office and my assistant's trying to tell me something, but I just walk straight. I go, oh, you know, follow me in, you know, talk with me. And I realised as I walked through my office, she was trying to tell me that Jay Leno was sitting on my couch. And Jay Leno had just turned up uninvited, and he just had bought a bottle of champagne. He said, hey man, great premiere, really enjoyed it. You did a terrific job. Great show, and he left.
And I remember he came in and he sat down and he said, you're gonna be fine. He said, you're gonna be absolutely fine. I think he said something like only 3,000 more to go or something. I remember being like, wait, we gotta do it again today?
In 3 months, this show will be mine.
The show had its foot on the gas from day one, and it has never let up on it.
We wanted our first couple weeks of shows to be very ambitious, and then we sort of got addicted to that pace.
A lot of the big elements that we have were invented in that first week.
Roll call, show 1, still a bit that we do today. Carpool, show 2, still a bit that we do today. Crosswalk the musical, still a bit we do today.
And usually in late night, you try to have one thing, like a top 10, or you try to have thank you notes or something like that. We were out in the first week with 3 major things that the show has carried on for the last 8 years.
In the next week, we shot a bit with Beckham that went viral. And then we did the house show, which is probably one of, if not the biggest risk we've taken. It flew out the tracks so quickly. It was brilliant. It was brilliant.
And we shot that week 1, but it aired week 2. And that's probably the moment where I was like, whatever else we're gonna do, if we do things like this, if this is in the DNA of the show from the beginning, we're gonna have so much fun.
I remember thinking that week, this show is ambitious. This show has ideas and has a drive that is going to just change late night.